Okay, we are now live on Facebook. Hello out there, everyone. My name is Ernestine Lyons. I am the host of Quick to Politic, and I am so excited to have a very special guest here. And just kind of want to let you guys know a little bit about the show. This is a political, social commentary show, web series, and also catch us online. My YouTube channel uploads the Quick to Politic episodes, where you can also check out all of the language learning and international content that I also upload there in addition to political content. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Ricardo White. He is running for state rep. And Ricardo is a lifelong Detroit resident. He has attended Detroit Public Schools, and he also attended Central Michigan University, where he received his bachelor's in international relations and public administration. I actually didn't know we were fellow international relations lovers. So, yeah. And then following graduation, he worked on several Detroit-based very prominent campaigns. In 2015, his career began in the Michigan House of Representatives as a legislative aide. So there he has experience. And in 2019, he joined the executive office of Governor Gretchen Whitmer as a public affairs specialist, where he worked with stakeholders and constituency groups to implement the administration's priorities. And so, Ricardo, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So first of all, thanks, Ernestine, for having me on. This is my inaugural podcast. So I've never been on a podcast before, so this is really exciting. And then it's just easier to have a friend on the other end to ease me into this tech part of being on a podcast. So I appreciate that. And I appreciate the invitation. So like you said, I'm a lifelong Detroit resident. I've lived here my entire life, of course, minus the years I went to college, but Detroit is home. And having the ability to work at some of the highest levels of state government has been a real honor for me. And, you get to really see the issues up close and personal. You really get to see how policy can impact a community or an individual. And I often say people, they often don't think about politics as something that affects their life on a daily basis, but it really does. I mean, from the time you wake up in the morning till you go to bed at night, there's some law in the books that's going to impact you, either to keep you safe from consumer protection issues, or just some regulation that'll keep you safe on the road as you're traveling to and from work. So, it's just interesting how government really works for people. And to be a candidate for office now is pretty interesting in itself. Earlier today, I was out knocking doors and been knocking doors for quite a while now, and really getting to meet people where they are, which is important. And you wouldn't believe how many people perk up a little bit when they say like, oh, you're the actual candidate and you're here. Like, let's talk about the issues that are.
Yeah, it's not somebody else. Like, it's not your proxy or your interns. It's you. Wow.
Yeah. And the amount of times people like hold up the lit and then look at me and then look at the litigant, they're like, oh, this is pretty cool. So I've enjoyed that. We've got a diverse district ahead of us with Clair Shores, Harper Woods, and the east side of Detroit, but I'm just excited to serve. I'm excited to win this race, hopefully come August 2nd and get up to Lansing and really get some things done for our community.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that lovely, overview. But, we've just had some redistricting. So tell us a little bit more about, what the position is and what a state rep, actually is for folks out there who, sometimes don't even know. They're not really even aware in these, off presidential years, right. Folks are not necessarily always paying attention to, who their current state rep is or state senators and, not knowing the difference between, I know my friend and I, we just went over this, like they were wondering what is their House district and what's the difference between the congressional districts and, who's running for, the House in Congress, who's running for, and then the local, like the Michigan, legislature and things of that nature. So tell us a little bit more about this new district. Yeah. And, what the roles and responsibilities are of a state representative.
Sure. So thanks to a constitutional amendment in 2018, this actually is the first time that we had an independent citizens redistricting commission, which took the process of drawing the lines out for congressional offices, state Senate seats, and state House seats out of the hands of politicians and put it toward an independent redistricting commission. So that has really helped with some of the partisan bend that we've seen traditionally in Michigan, where we have more competitive seats. And for the first time in my lifetime and in your lifetime, we have the possibility of really picking up the state Senate and flipping it back to Democrats for the first time since 1983, I do believe. So quite a long time ago since we've had Democratic control there. But we also have the opportunity to pick up the state House, which I'm actually really excited about after August, getting out there and knocking doors on behalf of Democrats who are in competitive seats and helping them win and picking up the 4 seats that we need to get the majority. Because it's the only way that we're going to be able to really get some of the important legislation through that's going to help our communities and protect our people. So government, to me, is a service industry. You go in there to serve. You're not going in there to grab the headlines or make a lot of money. You're going in there to implement really good policy. So that's what is motivating me to really keep going at this, even in some of the dark days that we've seen as of late, thanks to the Supreme Court. Well, I should say no thanks to the Supreme Court, because of some of the rulings that they've handed down. It's going to be up to us in the state legislatures to really defend the rights that people have up until this point and expand them. So, at the state level, to your question, we will be implementing legislation that will advance us economically, invest in our schools in the state, across the entire state, and really building up a workforce that's ready to take on the jobs that are coming as we continue to see our economy change from the traditional, carbon-based job creation to greener job creation. So we're going to have a lot to do here, and I really want to make sure that Michigan is leading that. There are so many opportunities for us as a state, and I think that we just need really good people who have the experience, who have the knowledge, who have the relationships, and really understand how government is supposed to work up in Lansing, and advancing those policies to make sure that we're benefiting everybody in this state and really growing our talent.
Well, thank you for that. And I love that you gave like such a thorough overview, and you started to get into like my second question, talking a little bit more about policy. I know you talked about, what we can do on the state level to, sort of counteract federal policies. And so tell us a little bit more about, things that are not only near and dear to your heart, as far as policy issues, and then your constituency, looking at, we've got very different, needs across. I'm from Harper Woods, and so our needs and desires are different here, and things that we want to see versus the east side of Detroit, where you're from, and then also St. Clair Shores. So tell us a little bit more about, the main policy issues that you hope to tackle for, just everybody in this region, and in general, like working with this legislative body, because you're going to be working with folks from all over the state as state representative. And what are some issues that you hope to, really be able to address for our constituents?
Sure. So I introduced something called the Main Street Michigan Plan, which is basically a set of policies that's going to address all factions of government policy. But the main focus is on the economy, on workforce development, and on education. As we continue to recover from COVID-19, we've seen some of the disparities that occur. Not only health disparities, which, Black people were disproportionately affected by COVID-19, especially at the onset. We saw a lot of people in Detroit getting sick and dying before we saw the rest of the state really spike to the level that it did. And that is because of years of cutting public assistance to quality healthcare access. So that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I, along with so many other Detroiters, lost family members from COVID-19. And, to have that loss and to have so much of that loss, we've got to do something. So the Main Street Michigan Plan is going to basically invest in making sure that we're having quality access to healthcare, especially when it comes to some of these social determinants of health. That's a big deal. Mental health services are a big deal. You know, there's just so much that we can do. So I'm going to use new and existing forms of dollars, tax dollars, to really invest in some of these programs and push this agenda across the line. And you know, I have to frame this in a way where people who may not vote with me 100% of the time agree with me. You know, this should not be a partisan issue. There are issues all across the state, whether it is in our urban communities where this district is based or our rural communities. A lot of those issues are the same. The only difference is the demographics of those issues. And for me, I'm seeing that more so as I'm representing a much more diverse district than traditionally we've had in some of these Detroit seats, where you'd have 80 or 90% of the district being people of color. Now it's about 50-50, this seat specifically. So, you know, there are a lot of issues that affect us, but, you know, I think that those are pretty much the same. The only thing that's different are the demographics. So, you know, I look forward to getting up to Lansing and really introducing some good legislation that's going to repeal the right to work so that workers have a better safety net in their jobs, repealing the ban on prevailing wage, which, you know, will again put more money in the pockets of workers, investing in our healthcare system so that individuals can, you know, go to the doctor and get some of these preventative healthcare issues taken care of, and mental health, but also in education, because kids were really affected by having to be homeschooled essentially for a year because we couldn't put kids in schools. It was just, we didn't have vaccines. It was dangerous. You know, COVID was spiking everywhere.
Not to mention the mental health of, you know, just like that mental health component that now they're going to be impacted by, you know, what happened. They were taken out of these social settings. They were in a world of uncertainty and kind of having to face growing up with that. So, yeah.
And then just think of kids who, you know, their first year of school in general was virtual. You know, now they're having to go into a classroom and adjust in second grade versus first grade, or, you know, going into first grade and not doing kindergarten. You know, that's a big shock to people. You know, I can remember what it was like to be in school, you know, many years ago, but it's, you know, you need to have that socialization. That's important to the development of kids. And, you know, there's going to be a lot that we have to tackle. And I think that some of these issues are going to be long-standing issues as we move forward, but that's why you need good policy in there to make sure that we're addressing them.
Definitely good policy for sure. And I loved all this. We talked about Main Street. We talked about right to work, prevailing wage, healthcare, mental health, education. And, you know, these are definitely great things to tackle. And, you know, so I just feel like with your talents and your background and already working in the legislature, you'll be, you know, a great asset to the area to work with other Michigan lawmakers to make sure that we improve, you know, our economy, our infrastructure, our educational system, and, you know, just make sure that, you know, Michiganders have options and that we are engaged in working with our, you know, elected officials to make sure that we see change. And I see all of these wonderful Democratic slogans behind you on your wall, like change we can believe in. You know, we definitely need to revisit those sort of things, you know, and those concepts, and so that we don't get complacent, so that we're engaged with, you know, our elected officials. So thank you so much for giving insight into like what your policy perspectives will be and what you hope to achieve once you're elected. I'm going to transition into one more question. We talked about this is a new House district, the 11th House district. So everybody remember that if you're in St. Clair Shores, Harper Woods, or the east side of Detroit, your state reps are a part of the 11th district. And so, you know, pay attention to your races and who you're running, who you're voting for, because the primaries are coming up. And so therefore, make sure you vote Ricardo White. And so I just kind of want to ask a little about this, because I am going to, you know, talk to other candidates who are running for state rep and kind of get a better idea of like where everybody stands. And it's such a crowded race. What sets you apart from other candidates?
Well, I think several things. So first of all, you know, at the end of the day, we're all Democrats. We all care about the same issues. But the argument is, how do you address these issues? You know, what are the strategies that you're going to take to make sure that your legislation gets passed, or that, you know, you're able to work with individuals who may not think like you, who may not come from where you come from, who may not be affected by the issues that you're affected by, but still you need them to get your agenda across the finish line. And I think that that's where my experience speaks for itself. In the age of term limits, so in Michigan, we have, in the House specifically, you get 3 2-year terms. So, if you're elected, you can get elected 3 times. You have to, of course, go to the voters every time and hope that they will reelect you. But you get 6 years in Michigan, which is not nearly enough time to learn the process, to understand what you're supposed to be doing, and to really forge those relationships to get things done. But thanks to my years of working as a staffer, both in the House of Representatives and in the governor's office, I have some friends who are not only elected officials, but are staffers who are really in Lansing some of the people that really get things done because of term limits. You'll see staffers who are around for 10 or 15 years, whereas a rep is there for 6 maximum. So I think that sets me apart. And again, the Main Street Michigan plan, a plan which is rare for Democrats to have in a primary, especially to really address the needs of our residents, not only in the 11th House District, but across the state. I've not seen anything else from any of my opponents when it comes to a firm plan to address some of the issues that we're dealing with. And I think people are taking notice of that, honestly. We've gotten some tremendous support when it comes to endorsements from labor unions like the UAW and the electric workers, Local 58, carpenters have endorsed us. We also got some elected officials. So Detroit City Councilwoman Letitia Johnson endorsed us. She was our first endorsement action.
I see Mark Hackle has endorsed you. So you've got Macomb County. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So we're getting both ends of this district involved here, and they see the type of candidate that I am. They see the type of campaign I'm running. They see the plans that I have and my experience. And I think that they're all in agreement. Like, this Ricardo guy, he's not a bad guy. Let's get behind him. But ultimately, what's going to matter are the voters. I'm greatly appreciative to the individuals who've endorsed me and the organizations that have endorsed me. But the voters are what's going to make or break this race. So that's why we've knocked over 11,000 doors so far. And we've mailed and just, really inundating voters with information about me, because, that's what matters here.
All right, beautifully said. And I kind of want to also ask about you're out there working hard. I see you on social media and you're door knocking and you're just out there, you're everywhere, you're in the communities, and you're sharing your message, and I see your mailers and things of that sort. I want to know, and this is kind of like a question, because I know when I was running for office, it was like this labor of love out there knocking on doors. And I felt like that was the thing that energized me so much. It was, really introducing myself to folks and talking to people one-on-one, just having a chance. And I had that same reaction, which was like, oh, this is you? And particularly with me, because I'm 4 foot tall and everybody's just expecting me to be, somebody who's way taller, and I don't look like I'm old enough to be in there. Like, are you even old enough? And so I just think that, some of the challenges, that come with that are also ones that warm your heart the most. So tell us about, so far, your most heartwarming moment of being out there talking to folks, and what are some stories that have, really resonated with you, as you knock on the door and say, hey, I'm going to be your next state rep. I'm running for office here, and, let me talk to you. And what have been some standout stories and things that have made you really feel like, okay, I'm doing this, and I feel energized to, keep going and to, really make this difference, once I get to Lansing.
So, last Friday, after the Dobbs decision was announced, I was I didn't really want to knock doors that day, because I felt so demoralized by what happened. And obviously the decision had been leaked beforehand, so we sort of knew it was coming. But I held out hope that because of the leaked decision and because of the backlash of so many millions of people across the country, someone would change their mind and say, this is the wrong decision to make. But unfortunately, that's not what happened. So, in an instant, Roe versus Wade was overturned, and, millions of women across this country are now in jeopardy of losing a right, which in the year 2022, I wouldn't think that we'd still be having debates over rights of people. So,
after 50 years,
especially
like next year would be 50 years of codified law, and you would just think that this is not my business. My moral prerogative is there. I'm not gonna, force folks to think the way that I think,
right.
just because I feel like something may be morally wrong. I think it's wrong for folks to eat meat.
Right.
I'm trying to be a kind of somewhat of a vegan, but it's just,
right.
You can't really force that kind of stuff on folks.
You can. And I mean, and just think about the people who did this. These are the same people who will go up and say, individual liberty and freedom is tantamount to, civilization, except for this. So, they carve out the exceptions when they want to. And I think that actually Justice Kagan said something similar about textualism today in an opinion for another case, but that's another case for another time. But I was knocking doors and I got this woman at the door who, a senior citizen, probably in her early 60s, up in Clair Shores. And, we're talking and she said, she was very upset about the decision. She was angry, she was hurt by it. And I told her, I said, as a man, I will never have to make that decision. But I respect the rights of others where if it's, it's something that will never affect me, but I'm not going to try to limit anybody else from having the same right or the same ability to make a choice. And, afterwards, we talked about that. We talked about Clarence Thomas's allusion to, well, maybe gay marriage shouldn't be a right either, which would directly impact me. My husband and I, we've been married almost 4 years. And if they overturned the case that granted gay marriage at the federal level, in Michigan, we still have the 2004 constitutional amendment saying that marriage is between one man and one woman. So overnight, my marriage would be dissolved. And, I thought about that. What happens if, I'm successful in this race and next year I'm a state representative and next year the court undoes gay marriage, So I'd be a state rep in Michigan and one night I'd have a legally recognized marriage, and then the next day I wouldn't. And what are the consequences of that? And that's a similar issue that we're seeing now with Dobbs. What are the consequences of this? But in Michigan, we have a governor who is standing up for women's rights. She asked for the Supreme Court in Michigan to overturn the 1931 law. I applauded her for that. I stood with her with that. And we've seen a temporary injunction put in on the books. So, hopefully the state Supreme Court in Michigan makes the right decision and overturns that 1931 law and gives women the right to choose in the state of Michigan. And that's something that I would want to see codified into law if the state Supreme Court does not act once I'm elected to office, because, again, I never have to face that decision. And I can't imagine what it has to be like to have to make that choice. But that's the whole point. Women should be able to make that choice. And I was encouraged by the endorsement of Planned Parenthood of Michigan throughout this campaign. So, we have a long road to go. There are a lot of issues that we've got to face, but, I keep at it. I keep at it.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you for being a tireless, warrior for these causes. And even as a man, also bringing up other cases like, if the Supreme Court decided to think twice about, certain, legislation and, laws that, we're a country of laws at the end of the day. And, what about Loving versus Virginia or, Brown versus Board of Education? And, I just feel that there are so many things that, could be impacted by, the precedent of just overturning certain things.
Yeah.
So
it's like we're going back to the dark ages. I mean, honestly, it's the dark ages for constitutional law in this country. And while I may not be able to do anything at the federal level to prevent them from undoing that, at the state level, especially if they continue to turn these cases back to the state and say the states have to deal with this, I'll be a tireless champion in Michigan, in Lansing, for the rights of all people. It doesn't matter if Black, white, Hispanic, Democrat, Republican, or anything in between. This is going to be a state where we've got to stand up for the laws of people and the rights of people.
Okay. Well, you've answered all of my questions. I'm looking to see if there are any questions from the audience here. Okay, the right person to really make a difference. You got my support. That's from Mr. Reginald Tabron. And I actually, okay, where can we read the details of the plan? And somebody already dropped your link right there in the chat. So my question is, as far as what kind of state rep do you see yourself being also when it comes to community engagement? Are there any initiatives? Like, I think that sometimes we do get folks who host, coffee hours and things like that. What kind of things would you actually do to, make sure that folks in Harper Woods, are getting to see you, and, you're working with folks, or, St. Clair Shores, and, of course, East Detroit. So
yeah.
What are
so what I want to do is, of course, continue the coffee hours, because that's a great way to meet people in the community, and do that in the evenings and on the weekends. But I think another thing with COVID, virtual town halls are important as well. So I will make sure that I have a virtual component to anything that I do, because some people may not feel like getting dressed and coming down to the coffee house and dealing with people. They may just want to sit at their home and interact the way that we're interacting right now, and I'm all for that. So I think that that's important. Obviously, social media is a component to it. I keep my phone with me. So, when people are on the Ricardo White for State Representative Facebook page, or on my Twitter account, which is Ricardo D. White, just at Ricardo D. White, those are the ways I like interacting with people as well. I'm a millennial after all. So having the
and we millennials, we are like glued to the phones and the technology, and that is one thing that, like, because it's a medium that gives such access to everybody, and you have like a means to communicate with folks and meet them where they are. So I think social media is extremely important to convey the messages that folks might not be always into what legislation is being passed. I would like to think, in an ideal world, that everybody is extremely interested in the legislation that you passed,
but people aren't
right. But if you can right, kind of convey, like, well, these are the things that I'm working on, and this is why this particular piece of legislation is important, and it's how it impacts you. So kind of conveying that via social media, I think is
exactly
really beneficial.
And something else I would like to do, there are a lot of people who don't really understand, to your point earlier, what the state of Michigan does. So, I would love the opportunity to have a couple of department leaders come down to the district and just have, small groups of residents who are able to talk to them and just really understand what their tax dollars are going towards. And I think that will help facilitate a lot of understanding about what the issues are, what we deal with on a regular basis. And then on days like today, so I know that up in Lansing, they're still talking about the budget. They're going to be voting on the budget tonight. So, engaging with the community early on to see what the budget priorities should be. I'll be asking those questions of people, and, I know that they will hold me accountable, because, that's what elections are for. So
that is exactly right. Yes. So, well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and being a part of, my podcast. And so you can watch the replay or listen to us, for those of you who are listening. You can listen to this audio. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel for you to see all sorts of political engagement and interviews, and, more information about Ricardo. And also make sure you subscribe to and listen to the podcast for more fun interviews and more engaging conversations in politics. So thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for all of those who joined out there online. And are there any other words of wisdom you want to leave us with? And also tell people about the primaries and any other messages or ways they can volunteer or be involved.
Sure. So, obviously the primary is coming up on August 2nd. Absentee ballots actually have already started going out. I already voted for myself a few days ago, so I know I have at least one vote for sure. So absentee ballots have started going out. I just hope that people make informed decisions about who they're voting for, not only for state representative, but we've got congressional races that are going on. We've got state
governor,
race for governor. So, there are so many other issues and candidates that are on the ballot. I just really hope people will go out and make sure that they're voting for the person that's going to be the right voice for their community. And I'm doing my effort to try to earn the votes of people every day. I'm going to continue to do that. And I just appreciate, Ernestine, you having me on for this time. And, I look forward to having more of these once I'm successful in this race.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. And I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye out there in cyberspace to all of our viewers. And remember, the primaries are coming up. And so we will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody. Okay. The live has ended. And to all of you who have watched this on YouTube here, thank you so much. And who are listening out there in podcast land. Thank you so much for listening to us to the very end, and vote for Ricardo. All right. So August primaries are coming up, and then we got November. So it's gonna be a nice race. So all right. Bye, everybody.